you guys said Jurassic Park used animatronics, and yes, it did. But in a documentary, behind the scenes of Jurassic Park, there's an interview with Steven Spielberg, where Steven Spielberg said he was going with, all like the running scenes, and they did use animatronics for the close-ups. I do admit that, and they did look very excellent for 1993. But think of this: 1993, Steven Spielberg wanted to use stop motion. Well, he didn't want to. He looked into using stop motion for when they were running wide shots where they could use animatronics. He then opted for CG because he said CG, computers are the way of the future and the way film is going now. He opted out of using practical effects because he knew that CG, and as great as that CG dinosaur looked as it bit that lawyer when he's sitting on the toilet in Jurassic Park, that was fantastic. All CG, that was amazing. 1993. You say we're moving back to practical effects. This summer, The Jungle Book was released. The only thing practical about that movie was Mowgli, the young child, and a few things he was sitting on here and there. Other than that, filmed on blue screens and green screens in Atlanta. Motion capture for all the animals, and that movie is being nominated for Oscars. That movie has Oscar consideration for best animation and possibly best picture. So that movie is fantastic, and if you think that we're moving back to practical effects, just look at The Jungle Book. Everything nowadays uses CGI.
You guys seem to forget one thing about practical effects is about sets too. Like in the Avengers, they used an actual compound to fight in and make the scene. Or in The Jungle Book, they actually set up like sets with like the mudslide set. That was all a set where he actually rolled down, not just a green screen thing where he started rolling down. Can I tell you guys about the Weta effect? It's like the effect that people know when too much CGI is being used and it makes it less likable. We'll compare 2003 Ang Lee's Hulk to the 2008 Incredible Hulk. In the 2003 Ang Lee's Hulk, they actually shot in, I think it was maybe San Francisco, and it was actually the whole background of San Francisco. Whereas in 2008's The Incredible Hulk, most of the set was CGI, and people didn't really like that much. You guys talked about Game of Thrones, castles and stuff. In a lot of cases, most people do use castles in Germany that are still standing for shooting. And you guys also talked about dragons. They actually use real pyrotechnics for the flames.
Okay, in Game of Thrones, what I was touching on is all the crowds, all the large amount of people that they have are all CGI. They start out with 20 people, and they duplicate them over and over to make a long line of people. That's how they do that. And touching on your point where you said in the Avengers they used a practical set, most of the movie was shot in Atlanta at Pinewood Studios on green screen, using reference photos of all the sets, all the backgrounds to create the whole movie.
With a large group of people, like you say, that they replicate, you could tell that a lot of those people look fake. They're placed there. Walking Dead, they hire hundreds of actors to play the walkers. It looks way more realistic, a lot more effective, a lot more menacing.
Gravity. You know the movie Gravity, Sandra Bullock, George Clooney. That movie, I believe it was nominated for Best Picture in 2008 or whenever it came out. That movie, 99% CGI. The only thing practical about that was Sandra Bullock on strings in the little pod. All of her surroundings in the pod, everything that was in that pod with her is CGI. They even had empty suits, empty spacesuits, which they CGI'd their face into to make it look more realistic. And that movie won, I'm not sure if it won, but it was nominated for Best Picture. Another point we'd like to touch on, they may use pyrotechnics in Game of Thrones, but they also, you cannot build a full animatronic dragon, especially on a TV budget.
Your time
Okay.
has started.
All right, so we'd like to thank you guys for listening, and we'd like to point out that CGI is not a distraction, but something to enhance the viewing experience. And yes, there is bad CGI, but our argument is strictly good CGI versus good practical, and we think CGI looks better. It's more modern, and CGI is just a tool in the director's tool belt. It's not how the person uses the tool, or it's not what the tool does, it's how the person uses the tool. Kent talked about a model train being used in the 1900s. And said, we wouldn't do that now. And that is a quote. You're right, we wouldn't do that now. Do you want to know what we do? We would use lifelike CGI to bring that train explosion to life. Have you seen Skyfall, one of the most recent James Bond films?
Nope.
Well, there's a fantastic car chase at the beginning of it. 100% CGI. Anytime you see a car chase, that car is CGI, the people are CGI. They wouldn't risk putting people in risk like that. Every group of people, CGI.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Thanks,
you've
Dan.
blown off your joke.
When you see a helicopter flying through the sky, CGI. Everything nowadays to look spot on and accurate is used through computer-generated imaging. It may not be cheaper, but why would you waste? I would rather spend a little more money to get something more lifelike than a little puppet, and have something that immerses the audience, like a Doctor Strange, where the cities bend in on themselves, rather than a gremlin wiggling around on a desk. For me personally, I think that CGI is the way to go, and good CGI trumps good practical effects any day.
Your favorite movies today would feel fake. And some of your favorite movies do use CGI, and you know they're fake. Practical effects are what makes the films you see feel real. The newest Mission Impossible used more practical stunts and effects in a scene where the main character is driving back through the streets. That was real. You wouldn't be getting the adrenaline rush quite the same as you would without a real exploding car or house crashing down in rubble. Imagining all characters around the same height in Lord of the Rings, do you really want to see a hobbit the same size as the towering Gandalf the Grey? The realism practical effects bring is incomparable. I think Jim Lee, comic book artist for DC, says it best. Even today, a lot of the CG you see in movies is so clean and crisp that it looks just fake. It's weird, the more advanced they get, the faker it looks. The use of machines, puppets, pyro, and camera angles bring the real emotion out in all of us.